On the night of the 11th of November, 2025, at approximately 9:03 p.m., employees and patrons at Karam's Lounge in Akron's Ellet neighborhood began noticing a customer whose behavior drew immediate attention. The individual was a 36-year-old man, later identified as the suspect involved in the incident. Those inside the bar reported that he appeared noticeably intoxicated and was acting in a disruptive and erratic manner. His movements, speech, and interactions indicated that he was not in control of his behavior, causing several patrons to grow increasingly concerned. As the night progressed, the man's behavior continued to deteriorate. Witnesses stated that he was no longer responding appropriately to staff and had become increasingly unpredictable. Given his escalating conduct and the safety concerns of the employees and customers, the staff eventually decided to remove him from the establishment. Once outside, the situation worsened. In the parking lot, the 36-year-old suspect reportedly grew more agitated. Multiple patrons and staff members saw him pacing, yelling, and behaving in a manner that they believed could escalate into violence. Moments later, a series of 911 calls were placed by individuals both inside and outside the bar. Callers reported that the suspect was pointing what looked like a firearm through the bar's windows and making threats to shoot. Even though none of the callers could determine whether the weapon was real, the perceived threat was serious enough that staff members immediately locked the doors and instructed patrons to take cover. The reports created a genuine sense of fear throughout the establishment. These emergency calls prompted Akron police officers to respond quickly, with witnesses reporting a potentially armed individual threatening to open fire. Officers approached the bar as a high-risk situation. The possibility of an active shooter scenario, inside or outside the business, required immediate action. The combination of erratic behavior, intoxication, and a reported firearm meant officers were entering a rapidly evolving and unpredictable situation. As they arrived, the scene remained tense, with bar staff still sheltered inside and the suspect somewhere outside the building. This set the stage for the confrontation that would occur within moments of their arrival. When Akron police officers arrived at Karam's Lounge, they quickly began searching the area around the bar for the suspect described in the 911 calls. It did not take long for one officer to make contact. The suspect was located outside the bar, still showing signs of confusion and agitation. The officer, aware of the earlier reports about a possible gun, approached with caution. Believing the suspect might be armed, the officer issued repeated commands for him to show his hands and get on the ground. At this point, the suspect appeared disoriented but partially responsive. His movements were inconsistent moments of compliance, followed by moments of confusion. The officer continued giving commands, attempting to gain full control of the situation without escalating it further. Despite partially following directions, the suspect repeatedly moved his hands toward his jacket. Given the earlier reports from witnesses claiming he had pointed a gun through the bar's windows, this gesture was interpreted as a potential threat. The officer had to quickly evaluate whether the suspect was reaching for a weapon. Within roughly 20 seconds of the officer's initial contact, the situation escalated to a point where the officer perceived an immediate danger. Interpreting the suspect's movement toward his clothing as a sign that he might be drawing a firearm, the officer opened fire. Multiple rounds struck the suspect, bringing the confrontation to a sudden halt. The suspect fell to the ground, and officers quickly moved in to secure the scene. With the perceived threat neutralized, their attention shifted to providing life-saving measures. Officers immediately began first aid, applying medical assistance to stabilize him until paramedics could arrive. The shooting occurred only moments after the first officer arrived, illustrating how quickly the situation evolved. The combination of intoxicated behavior, earlier reports of a gun, and the suspect's unclear compliance created an extremely tense environment that left little room for hesitation. Paramedics arrived soon after and transported the suspect to a nearby hospital. He was listed in serious condition, and officers remained on scene to secure evidence and begin the early stages of the investigation. The rapid transition from initial contact to a shooting left many unanswered questions that investigators would attempt to resolve in the hours ahead. Following the shooting, Akron police officers secured the scene outside Karam's lounge, while medical personnel treated the suspect. Paramedics transported him to a local hospital, where he was admitted with serious injuries. Despite the severity of the gunfire, officers ensured that he received appropriate medical aid as required by protocol. Once the suspect was stabilized and transported, officers began a systematic search of the immediate area, with multiple 911 callers stating that the suspect had pointed what appeared to be a firearm through the bar windows. Confirming or disproving the presence of a weapon became a crucial part of the investigation. Officers searched the suspect, the surrounding ground, and nearby objects for any gun or weapon that could match the descriptions provided earlier. No firearm was found on the suspect or in the immediate area. The absence of a weapon raised important questions about what witnesses had seen and whether the object reported as a gun was something else entirely. Investigators also considered the possibility that the man's erratic behavior, combined with poor lighting and rapid movement, could have caused bystanders to misinterpret what they saw. Despite the lack of a recovered firearm, the investigation did not discount the credibility of the 911 callers. Their statements were consistent, and their fear was genuine, prompting the locked doors, sheltering inside the bar, and the urgent police response. Detectives began interviewing witnesses, reviewing body-worn camera footage, and collecting physical evidence. The timeline from the man's behavior inside the bar to his removal, to the reported threats, and eventual contact with police was examined in detail. The key focus was understanding why the man appeared to reach toward his jacket during the confrontation and whether those movements reasonably led the officer to believe he was reaching for a gun. The suspect remained hospitalized but alive following the confrontation. In the hours that followed, investigators worked to confirm his identity, something that had not been clear at the scene. As officers interviewed witnesses, reviewed footage, and collected physical evidence, they were able to establish who he was and begin building a clearer understanding of the events that led up to the encounter. Meanwhile, the officers directly involved in the shooting were placed under standard review procedures. This is routine in the department after any use of deadly force. The step does not imply wrongdoing. Instead, it ensures that an independent examination of their actions can move forward without interruption. The officers were temporarily relieved from regular duty while required evaluations and administrative protocols were completed. As the investigation progressed and oversight personnel finished their documentation, the scene was gradually returned to normal. The location where moments earlier a violent struggle had unfolded slowly transformed back into its everyday setting. Once the last investigators finished their work, the bar located at the scene reopened to the public. The investigation remained active, driven by the department's effort to understand every decision, every movement, and every moment that led to the outcome on East 6th Avenue.